Welcome to Texaco Camaro race recap sponsored by Fram Filters. We've been running the Fram filter for over 3 years now, and it's just been a phenomenal filter for us. So just appreciate Fram coming on board a few years back and just being a part of our program and really helping out in every way that they can. But let's get started. Let's talk about Sema, OUSCI 2023, the Optima Ultimate Streetcar Invitational. Always a fun event, always a great time. Optima Batteries does a fantastic job of creating an experience out there. They even call it the Optima experience. They have drifting, they've got all sorts of just pro drivers, just the Baja truck guys, just ripping tires off, the drifters. And then obviously the ultimate streetcars are out there trying to battle to figure out who's going to be the ultimate streetcar for 2023. And it's just a great time. Always fun to be at Sema. It's one of those bucket list things. We're fortunate enough as we win and get points to get in to go there every year. And I hope that just continues on forever. Our series was created from Sema. So it's kind of that's the linchpin. That's the point that we're all trying to battle to get to. And Optima just does a fantastic job. And I know Advanced Auto Parts, presenting sponsor, puts a lot of money in. There's a lot of other supporting sponsors that go along with it. One in general for the GTV class, which I'm biased to, is Classic Car Liquidators. They do a fantastic job. The Kellys are out there racing, sponsoring, and just being a part of, what we do in the GTV class of the Optima Ultimate Streetcar. But, if you haven't been to Sema, there is a public portion, which, I didn't even really know for some time until we started going out there. You can't really go inside of Sema, but there's an outdoor portion that's, I don't know, maybe it's 25 or 30% of the cars that would be at Sema or on the outside. A lot of the big trucks are on the outside, but there's just a lot of stuff going on that you can just walk right in and you don't even need a Sema pass. But obviously the big heavy lifting and the partners and sponsors and parts and all that are all going on inside of Sema. So it's awesome to get a badge and be able to get in and walk around. There's, now that we race at Sema, which, a lot of people may not know, in the past, it was a lot of drifting and burnout stuff that's going on there. But the ultimate streetcar now with Optima Battery is really stepping up and creating this Optima experience. We actually do, 3 elements out of our 5 elements. And really it's 4 out of the 5 because we drive from the SEMA show to Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And that's considered our road rally or that shows that we're a streetcar. But we do the design and engineering, which is you do a 4-minute story talking about how you've designed your car. Just you're kind of selling your car. And that's sometimes can be, the decision maker at races and even at the Ultimate Streetcar Invitational is that design and engineering. And that's why that series was really created, is that these are show cars that race and they go really fast. So, the level of Optima Ultimate Streetcar has just stepped up continually over the years. And I know even in the GTV class, it's getting a lot tougher to be at the top. It's we came in second in the points this year, but Ryan Breezy, Schmitty, Hobaugh, and even Bob Bertelston coming out of the background here, just really phenomenal drivers, fast cars, and they've really enhanced their cars, honestly beyond what the Texaco Camaro has in it right now. But the Texaco Camaro will continue. I've said it before, we have 15 phases on the car. Besides the burn event that we had at Daytona a few months back, the phases are still in play. But, some of the phases that we really need to start to get back to the top, which is really adding ABS. What the ABS does is on some of the shorter elements, which are the Peak Performance Challenge, where you're kind of accelerating and braking quickly, kind of braking in a garage 20 by 40 spot. If you don't have ABS, you're really just going to flat spot your tires. And once you do that, you'll see the white smoke coming off on that event. Once you see that white smoke, you pretty much got flat spots on your tires. And so that translates onto the road course when you're going, over 100 miles an hour and you're feeling like your tires are out of balance. But it also continually, whenever you have a flat spot, it just continually picks up that flat spot every time you go do an element or even braking on the road course. It'll find that flat spot and just keep it making it worse. And it just becomes an issue. But other than that, the ABS will allow you just to kind of mash that brake and stop, not on a dime. There's a lot of artwork and driving that goes into it. But if I were to mash my brakes, just white smoke, flat spots. And what ABS does, obviously, just in your normal modern cars is it pulsates and it just allows for that braking, so you're not actually just tearing up the tires. They may spark a little, or not spark, but pop a little bit of smoke, a little bit if you're on a slow mo. I've seen that actually before. When I was doing some commentating with Optima Gym, I saw an ABS car that actually put off a little smoke, but the frames were so slow, like you probably couldn't even see that in real life. But it's just it's a phenomenal ad, but it's really not in the phases that I have. I'm really trying to learn the car more and more, and there's some elements that we probably should have put in the beginning, but the Texaco Camaro was really going to be kind of half cruiser, half racer. And now it's, I just got back from a car show, so I still take it out on the street all the time. I go to car shows, I go to this and that. But it's probably 10 or 15% of its life doing that type of stuff. And really, when I'm on the street, it's really because we're just kind of shaking it down or testing it before we get to go to an event. But it's a full race car now, and it's moving that way, and that's the phases, is to take it that way. But like I said, ABS probably not going to be added in 2024. So I'll probably start staying around like top 5 or somewhere around there in the pack without it. And that's okay. I'm not trying to win the whole thing anymore. I think what I'm going to do is start working on my driving a little bit more, and then start adding in those nannies, because really I don't want the extra controls on what I'm doing from a driving standpoint, because I'm still only 4 years in. So I need to kind of learn those aspects. So I'm going to go kind of like what I did in sports and baseball, is you've got to go back to your basics. You got to go back to the mechanics. I really don't have any basics or mechanics on how to drive a race car. So that's really what I want to work on, finding that. And then the next phase for the car is most likely to run a full Motec system, so that I can get the rev matching and the downshifts on the sequential more tuned in. The Exoneering box is phenomenal. But I think for what I'm going to do with that Motec is also try to modulate the power, just the torque that comes out of the motor and the horsepower. When you're running that much and it's a supercharger and it's just instant on, it becomes tough on the smaller elements. On the track, you really have no excuses. I mean, it's phenomenal, and you can have sometimes as much power as you want when you're on a big track. But when you're doing the Peak Performance Challenge, kind of that drag race down, 180, come back, stop in a box, or the autocross, depending on smaller or bigger course. Track cross, I really don't have a lot of excuses on not doing well on a track cross, but I usually do. I usually do pretty well on a track cross. But a smaller autocross like we would run at Sema or OUSCI, I have a little more trouble, and some say it's because of the spring rate. I got 1,400 spring rate in the front, 700 in the back. But I like a stiffer car. I think it's helping me learn how to drive a car like that, and maybe I could go softer and kind of whip it around a little bit better. But from that aspect, I think reducing some of the power, and that I'll be able to do that if I go full Motec. So I do data logging through my Motec system right now, but I run the Motec into the GM CAN. And so that's really running the LT5 motor. And for people that don't know and that have LT5s and maybe listening to this, I've never put a tune in that motor. It's never been on a dyno. So you don't really need to do that to that motor. I've heard of, a handful of people, actually maybe 2 or 3, and 2 of them have had issues whenever they put the tune in. Either just, spinning it up too much, motor didn't like it, or hurt the motor, and maybe it was something else that they did. But, it just seems like they've had some issues. And I've been running the car, knock on wood. We haven't really had a ton of issues. I mean, at some point, probably going to have some issue. I mean, you can't just beat on motors and beat on them and beat on them and not have an issue. So, I think from that standpoint, at least my advice is run an LT5 for 4 years on, some level of racing. You don't really need a tune for that. So if you're trying to get more power, and you're just doing kind of like straight line stuff, maybe, I guess, but for track or autocross or really Optima Ultimate Street Car, Good Guys, LS Fest, whatever it may be, you're not going to need a tune on an LT5. Whatever's in there is nice. But that being said, once you switch to a full Motec system, I'm going to have to change my philosophy there, because we're going to have to put a tune in there that can really kind of talk to those systems because the Motec's going to have to run the motor. So that's been my hesitation. I'm still not 100% that route, but it is my next phase that I need to do, along with a roll cage. And the roll cage is one of those items where I've been trying to reduce weight. We took the drag racing tank out of the front end of the car when we had the burn event in Daytona. So I don't really have that water box that I can throw ice into and cool down the blower if I do a drag race pull. But I don't really use it. I don't drag race, besides LS Fest when you do kind of a no prep situation. I didn't even use it there. You just don't really have the time. I guess if you're like a full drag racer, you could run a pass or something. But so we took it out. That probably saved, I don't know, 15, 20 pounds, maybe a water weight and the tank. So, but it's really going to come down to a full Motec system, which means adding a tune and then potentially the roll cage. Because now that we're going, 164 miles an hour on tracks, not having a full roll cage in there, which I just have a harness bar for the restraints. I really think that that's probably where I need it. That probably should have been phase one when we built the car. But again, I didn't know exactly what I was going to be doing. I'd never been in this environment before. But so that's where we are. That's a little bit of an update on what's going on there. But back to SEMA, back to OUSCI, racing, doing that peak performance challenge. I didn't really understand what was going on with my driving. I mean, I just got the car back the week before SEMA, literally Tuesday, and I left on a Thursday. It got done on Tuesday, left on Thursday. It rained Wednesday. I couldn't even take the car out onto the road to even shake it down. I ran it for like 30 minutes in my shop. Just kind of made sure that I didn't see any hoses leaking or anything like that when it got hot and cycled through the heat. But that's it. So, other than that, we were racing just to get the car to SEMA on a deadline there. And, later on, basically what I figured out is that I didn't understand that I had hot spots and glazing on my front rotors. And where those were new rotors going into Daytona and brakes, they were it looked like somebody had melted like white wax on the rotors in various spots. And then there were slick hot spots on them. So I didn't really realize what was going on. Hadn't had time to focus on it. I'm out there trying to do, this short, braking and acceleration. Every time I hit the brakes, like the rear end's just snapping around on me. And I put a new rack in. I put a faster rack and pinion in front of 15-1 versus a 20-1. So I was kind of in my head saying, well, maybe it's just quicker inputs and I'm just, not driving it right. And I just need to kind of, take it easy. And I was trying to take it easy anyways, because when you're at SEMA in the Optima Ultimate Streetcar Invitational, we have a big lot, but big lots get small when you start getting up to like 75 or 80 miles an hour in a straight line and you're looking straight at a concrete wall. So, I didn't want to really push the car. That wasn't my goal. I really wasn't trying to achieve anything at the Invitational. Just going to have fun, have a good time. Just glad I was there. Glad the car wasn't burnt to the ground. But, you get out there and you want to kind of, compete to some level and you don't want to look like, you don't know what you're doing. And that's okay. That I probably, to the people around, look like, what's he doing? Because every time I would hit the brakes, the back end would just snap on me. And it was snapping on me, through a little bit of whiskey throttle coming out of turns. But, that's fine. I know what I was doing there, just not getting traction with the Nankings. It was a little colder. The Yokohamas were a better tire to run. They liked the cold. But I like the 335s that the Nankings have now, so the big meats on the back. So I always default to what looks good versus what performs because, I don't know. That's some of my mentality and probably hurts me sometimes. But I didn't have any I had front brakes, but let's say I had 25% front brakes versus what I should have 100% of whatever I'm feeding it. Because I have a balance bar, a manual brake system, so I can change how much I have. I turned that all the way up to 70% front brake and still couldn't get the front to set. And it was just, I couldn't really figure it out. I figured it was me just rusty, faster rack, maybe going, a little crazy with my driving. I don't know. Sometimes that happens. But I tried to reel it back and say, I'm not gonna do anything crazy. I'm just gonna go slow. I'm just gonna kind of try to get down, brake a little bit, turn around, not go crazy in the box. and I really only white smoked the tires one time in the Peak Performance Challenge box. But the rest of the time, I mean, if you look at videos, I'm just coasting in like I'm on a Sunday drive, and that's really what I was trying to do. But when I got less, aggressive, I guess you would say, the car still was snapping on the back end, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then got to the autocross, and that was fine, but there's a a point after a slalom on the autocross, and it's pretty tight, and you got to really, with 1,400-pound spring rate, you got to really set the front to get the front to bite and to turn right. And I was trying to do that, but the front wasn't setting, and the back end was just snapping around on me, and I did the typical Texaco Camaro spin around, light them up. I think I only hit one cone, so I didn't take out a bunch of cones. So, I didn't go crazy and just start wiping out tons of cones. I hit one cone, spun it around, but it just doesn't feel good whenever I know I drive better than that, and I just couldn't control the car, and I was starting to chalk it up to myself. And so autocross was the last day. It was on Friday, and we get done. I did decent. I don't know where I settled out, maybe ninth out of 22 cars in autocross. I was 12th in the Peak Performance Challenge out of 22 cars, so definitely kind of off the top five where I kind of wanted to be, even driving timid and all that with the car being there. But I couldn't figure it out. But then I'm sandwiched between Schmitty, which won the points this year. I got second, he got first, and third place, which is Breezy. And these are your top GTV guys right now. And I'm sitting in between them, all great guys, talk to them all the time. But I'm looking at their, cars and all that, and just kind of, we're meandering around once we're done. The cars are lined up, ready. Everybody else is running their laps and all that. So, 2 or 3 hours, and I'm just looking at their front wheels, and I'm looking at my front wheels, and I'm like, I have no brake dust on my front wheels. It looks like somebody polished them and shined them and ready for a car show. And I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. I mean, there should be some haze. There should be brake dust. I'm looking at theirs, and I'm like, they've got brake dust, kind of a gray all over theirs. And then I'm looking at their rotors, and their rotors are nice and shiny. And then I look back at my rotors, and I'm like, it looks like somebody just melted white wax candle all over them, to some extent, and then little spots, and it just didn't look right. So, Schmitty and Breezy weren't there at the time, but Ramey, which is a prior 2020 Optima Ultra Street Car champion, guy from Texas. We talk a lot. He helps me out and kind of gives me tips. But I just brought him over and I said, take a look at these. I know something looks off here, and I think it is off. And he's like, that definitely should not look like that. I mean, you could have some of that, brake material on there, but yours is just caked. And so, I'm done for the day, and that night we're going to be going over and doing our road rally or street component over to Las Vegas Motor Speedway, because we're doing track in the morning on Saturday. And so we're going to be doing high speeds. We're going to be trying to have, to go for it big time out there. And that's where my car should be able to perform, regardless of my excuses or mistakes and driving and whatever else. So he was like, you've got to sand those rotors down, sand the brake pads down or something. So fast forward, that was a big issue, because when I went to Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we're on the highway, and I was able to do kind of cruise with Dapkus and Farrington, and we were having fun, just kind of cruising. It's about a 15-20 minute drive over there. But whenever I would do some hard braking, it was just a lot of chatter, just shaking, and I didn't really feel that when I was out there at Sema, but you could really feel it when you're at 80, 90 miles an hour, and you're kind of shutting it down to 50 or 60. So I knew there was just a major issue. We had already identified it, but it just was so bad. So when I got the car back later that night, we had dinner. Schmitty was there. Actually, the guy I talked about that I was sandwiched between, he was like, look, I got some brake pads that'll fit your car. And Mike Dussault, who built the car, he was there commentating, but he was commentating at the time that I was doing all this analysis on trying to figure out why I can't brake, or what my issue was. And so at dinner, they were both there, and we just came up with the plan of get up early. I'll go take the rotors off. And Ted Barnes was actually there too, and he had his rig there. So he had all the tools to kind of help out there. And that's one thing I don't have in my equipment was an L grinder, sander, whatever. So I'm getting one of those. I'm buying one of those with the little sanding pads. But it's not the best thing for the rotors, but versus being able to turn them somewhere and get them cleaned off, we use that. And Ted, thanks Ted, he cleaned those off for me. I got the brake pads from Schmitty, threw the rotors on, put the brake pads on, and basically went from like 25% braking to like 75%. So I was like, this is great. I still got a little bit of the chop, but the car's stopping. It's not violent. And maybe more of the stuff will just burn off with the new brake pads, because the brake pads I took off, I mean, they were totally just, shiny, smooth, glazed off, whatever. I'm not sure what I did to them, but so that helped out. So that was my issue. But again, I was just excited to be there. Optima did a great job. Bob Sobey ended up winning the Optima Ultimate Street Car for the second year in a row. Congrats to him. The last one to do that was actually Mike Dussault, which built my car. He did it in 2018 and 2019. So pretty big accomplishment to do it back to back. I mean, that's tough to do. There's been others that have done it, Danny Pop and some others back in the day. But in the new era where these cars are just so fast and the development is just so beyond, you've got Bob Sobey in an all-wheel drive GTR that is the top contender. And, you have to win in D&E, the design and engineering. You have to have a beautiful car, and he does. Really developed it. Ended up 21st out of 79 cars, overall, 6th in GTV out of 22 cars. GTV was the largest class again this year. A lot of times it is. A lot of the sponsors will put in a GTV type car. I think there's 22 cars in the GTV. The next closest was probably the high teens, maybe 16, 17. But it was great. But the hot laps, the track at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, I shaved off 2 seconds on my personal best time. So I got 5th overall in GTV. So you can see I pulled myself back up. I mean, I know what the car can do, and I know where I can stand and be, regardless of not having ABS and some of the other nanny controls and traction control and all that. So I think and that's also, when you go out there and you get the flat spots and you're just kind of like shaking. I just went to the car show, like I said this morning, and, I can feel it on the road. It just kind of feels like they're not horrible, but they're there. And the faster you go, the more you feel them. But just excited. Shaved off 2 seconds off personal best. I mean, I've been to Las Vegas. This is probably my fourth or fifth time being there, because I did a regular season event there, not just the OUSCI event one time. And so really shaved off some time. So I was excited about that. I know 3 places on the track. 2 are late braking zones that without that ABS, the late braking gets a little sketchy if you're not a great driver. And the area that I picked up the time was a real sweeper, high-speed area to where it's just about grip on the car, and I know the car has a lot more in it. So I'm usually driving 8/10, maybe try to get 9/10. I probably got 9/10 through that area in the car, but I'm usually 8/10. I'm not driving 10/10 with the car. I'm just not there yet with some of the components that I need. And really just my own driving. I just, there's no reason for me just to go crazy with the car. The car can do it. You put, CB Ramey or Mike Dussault in there or whoever else, and they could probably do a lot more with the car right now. But I'm just not willing to take it to that level yet. I want to have some other things in, like a roll cage and things like that. So happy overall with the event. Sad I didn't do better at the SEMA show, but again, I was glad to just shake it down. The car made it through. The car's been super reliable. I mean, again, if you don't know, the burn that I had at Daytona, that was totally my fault. I didn't check the number 2 catch can. I checked the number 1 catch can and not the number 2, because it was never full. So that was my fault. Daytona does a lot of crazy things to your car, and so nothing about the build. So I checked the catch can after every run at SEMA and the road course at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Nothing in it. There's nothing in it. And so just like always, but I will be checking that catch can for the rest of my life owning the car. And so that's where we're at. But 2023 OUSCI, SEMA, fantastic. Just overall, thanks Optima, thanks Advanced Auto Parts, thanks Classic Car Liquidators, thanks to all the sponsors, thanks to all my sponsors and everybody that kind of helps me out throughout the year. Fram obviously is one of the main sponsors that continues our race program. So that's that's kind of the recap on the SEMA OUSCI. I wanted to kind of touch on, the 2024 season, potentially some things we might be doing with the program from a social media aspect and communication aspect. So that's what I want to go into next. And I know that we're getting, 25, 26 minutes in here, but, bear with me. So I think the race schedule that we're probably going to do is probably try to start in February with Optima Ultimate Streetcar at Sebring. So they've added Sebring in out in Florida. We have a place out in Florida, so I've got some family that'll be there. So that's a little earlier start than I like to get on a national racing focus. But will I be able to get some of my enhancements done by then? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see what happens. But and the enhancements again are the Motec and the roll cage. But February 23rd through 26th, Sebring Optima Ultimate Streetcar. Thinking about that as kind of our start, and then going into April, Good Guys here in Texas, which is always fun. It's a real tight autocross course, so we'll be looking forward to that. And then May, it looks like we're going to do LS Fest here in Texas, which LS Fest Texas is a phenomenal event. It's actually run by the individuals FM3 that does the Optima Ultimate Streetcar event. So same people, same great professional, attitude and focus of the events, and that's what I really like about Optima Ultimate Streetcar. I mean, a lot of other events I've been to, I mean, they're all really, professionally run, but the level of what FM3, Jimmy Day, all of the guys that are a part of FM3, they really take it to a next level as far as the professionalism and how they run things. And there's no messing around. I mean, even myself, it's, we get all crazy and, things happen. We get a little over our skis on things, and they'll come in and kind of calm you down and tell you, hey, you need to focus on this or do this. They just don't, it's not a willy-nilly operation. And that's what I like about that they bring to the LS Fest. It's a little bit more casual, the LS Fest Texas, because, it's a lot going on. You got drag racing cars there, drift cars there. You got the autocross. So we're not the number one focus, our type of cars doing the autocross. I mean, there's tons of focuses going on there, Burnout Pit and all this stuff. It's just a really cool event. It's kind of like a festival type event, I would say, where people can just kind of move around. Anyways, that's going to be in May 17th through 18th. So we're gonna definitely try to make that. June 28th through 30th. That's the Road America. So I've said before, I don't miss Road America. Hopefully I can keep that streak going. Really love it. Family loves going up there. We love just kind of hanging out. Just an iconic racetrack. I still haven't been to Seepkins, which is a place that you're supposed to go to, to wet your whistle, I guess. I still haven't been there yet. So hopefully I can add that in, this year. So June, Road America. July and August look like, gaps right now. But, if I do get that roll cage in, it's going to be a really high standard roll cage that you could take to hill climbs. And I know me and Mike DeSold, and he's looking at getting groups together to not do Pikes Peak. I'd love to go there and visit. I don't think that my car is really to the caliber to do that. Maybe one day. I mean, that could be, it's definitely on the goal list, but it's not a must do. But I think it would be cool if I could get in. I'm not sure exactly how you do that, but I definitely know I need to have a roll cage that can get into those types of events and those hill climbs. So the roll cage I'll have, I know there's some little areas on the roll cage that you have to kind of have an extra piece added to. So that will be added to my car because I'm not going to go back and have to do it. So maybe we could add something in, but maybe we'll just take a break in the summer and go out to Florida and enjoy it. But September, Good Guys, again, the Lone Star Nationals, it's always fun to do two Good Guys. I didn't get to do any last year because I couldn't do the first one because of a conflicting New Orleans race for Optima. And then I broke the car after Daytona and couldn't do the September race for Good Guys. So I missed them all last year, which was unfortunate. But hoping to get back, and then October off, and then hopefully we can point in. There could be an Optima race that has to get added in there if I can't get the points or I can't get a win or something to try and get into the Invitational, because that is the goal. That's my ultimate goal. The car is built for Optima Ultimate Streetcar. The goal is to get to the Invitational every year. So if I can't do that, I'm going to have to add an event. I'm going to have to clear that with my wife, though. But we will get on that as soon as we can. She definitely is all about supporting the program. So it's good to have my wife and and my daughter that's 2.5. She's doing a little bit of electric go-karting, not racing, but just in the backyard. We're racing ourselves, but so everybody's kind of into it. So we always like doing SEMA, and it's a fun time. So definitely might add, but looks like that's kind of the race schedule outside of some local stuff. I always like to do some local autocrosses. I haven't been out there as much as I would have wanted to, but I've had, just repairs and issues and things with the car. Once I get back, it's like I get back and then there's something going on that weekend locally and my car is, not ready to go. So hopefully I can get back to doing some SCCA or Equip Rapide, which is a local autocross organization here. You can look them up, autocross.com. That's a really cool URL to have. They must have got that early on, but autocross.com is a Dallas local autocross organization. But so that's the racing schedule. And then really, the big 118 scale came out. We were trying to get to 20,000 followers. We're at like 14,3 or 4 right now. We lost our page. If you didn't know, we had, a lot of followers and, something got compromised or some issue happened or whatever. You don't really know. There's nobody to talk to. Nobody tells you. But since we relaunched the page, if you're listening to this and you think you're following us, just make sure you're following us on Instagram. Make sure you're following us here on YouTube. And I would say make sure you're following us here on YouTube, but we're going to be putting some stuff out, but it's in the works. And I'm not trying to be like, Joe Rogan or somebody like that, but we are going to look at putting a podcast together. Most likely be called the Texaco Camaro Show. And, really just the naming isn't that big of a deal, but just kind of wanted to kind of keep the branding across the board the same, just for, recognition of, who is this person talking or what's he all about? Eventually, I think that maybe people know that the Texaco Camaro is not just a show car or whatever, but actually, races around and does some events across the country. So we're not trying to be anything bigger than we are or anything like that, but I thought it'd just be interesting to, see if I could find some interesting content to talk about, not about the Texaco Camaro. It's probably going to be, very limited on what the Texaco Camaro is doing. I'll probably do these race recaps for the Texaco Camaro stuff, but for the Texaco Camaro Show, the podcast or vlog or whatever you call that type of stuff, where you're doing a video and just talking about racing and talking about just different elements across the board, talking to people like Mike Dussault and just kind of listening to his story and what he's done and what he's continuing to do with his car. The guy that built my car, he's got a phenomenal car. Just, you can go to DussaultDesigns.com and look at what his race program is. He does Pikes Peak, hill climb, Optima batteries. He's an Optima batteries ambassador. So just really cool stuff. There's a lot of really cool people out there that, we might just have conversations with and just, kind of go from that standpoint. So, just kind of doing throwing it out there that might happen. It's a definite, it's in motion, whether these things come to fruition or not, we'll see what happens, or if it does, and then it's just a big bust and it unwinds or whatever, that's fine too. I'm just doing all this stuff because I really have a passion for the car community and car culture, and used to be car show stuff, and now it's kind of grassroots racing environment. And I think it's just interesting, this little middle area that people have in kind of the hobby racing side, to where it's almost kind of professional. I mean, a lot of the people that do race own shops, and it is professional. It's a lifestyle for them for sure. And I get to do it from a hobby standpoint. I don't have a shop and all that. I mean, I have my Texaco Camaro garage, but as far as building cars and all that, I'm still learning, how to work and build on my car. So, it's a lot harder with the new technology, and you have to have good people around you, so Motorsport Electronics that works with, Motec stuff and all that. The Motec thing, I've dabbled in it. It's interesting. It's hard. I don't know if, people out there listening have ever dealt with QuickBooks or anything in the financial world, but it's kind of like that. You've got to you make a mistake here, you'll mess up, 4 other things. So, learning as I go with the electronics. But, I think, those would be things that we might talk about and just go in depth on, and just kind of give some insight on, on what all this stuff is, because I know before I came into this, motorsports, grassroots racing environment, I was a car guy, whatever in the culture, but didn't really understand all the dynamics, especially with driving. I mean, driving's a different thing, but just the components that go into these racing cars and programs. I just learned what a third shock is. And if you don't know what that is, I mean, it's a very interesting concept that, people with high performance aero and things like that have. But it's, those types of things, even though I don't have them, it's good to know them. It's interesting to talk about them. And maybe you have an application that needs it and you don't have it and your car's not performing the right way. And by no means do I have the answers to that, but I think if I can bring people on that do have the answers or have an opinion at least, and car stuff is opinionated, everything in life's opinionated, but there is some experience and knowledge that goes into this, especially when you have somebody who can build a car, race a car, drive a car. If you have somebody who does all that, that's pretty interesting to hear. But even the people that are the support of the programs is very interesting to hear too. I mean, I get exposed to some of that through Mike Dussault, and I just think it's interesting. I mean, I have no idea sometimes what they're talking about, but I can go research it later, or they'll take the time and kind of explain it to me. But so things like that. Texaco Camaro show could be coming out there to you on the YouTube. So think about that. If you see it, that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be about the Texaco Camaro. It's just going to be me and in our garage, potentially just doing a podcast, talking to people that are smarter and know more than I do for sure. So thanks for listening. I know we're getting 36, almost 40 minutes in, but just wanted to give a recap into the year. So happy holidays to everybody, and hopefully we'll have a ton more content coming out on Instagram and Facebook and probably YouTube about the Sema OUSCI racing. So we'll have some of that coming out, and then a little bit more updates. We're also going to probably do another giveaway on the 118 scale. So we didn't give away the 118 scale. I mentioned that earlier because we didn't get to 20,000 before Sema. But I'm probably going to, honor that and just, put something out there. And then once we get to 20,000, somebody's going to get that 118 scale autographed Texaco Camaro. It's huge. It's big. That's not it right there. That's an RC car. That may be like a 110 scale, but it's a big car, the 118. So doors open, hood opens, trunk opens. So pretty cool. But I'll be setting that up. Anyways, getting long-winded here. Happy holidays. Be safe. We'll see you soon.